they marched with men praising first. You missed that one. Why is it that God's command originally was for men to lead in worship first? But today, the women lead first. Are you saying that the women are being disobedient? No. No. Thank God for them. What I'm suggesting is that there has been a conspiracy. A spiritual conspiracy to remove the importance, impact, influx, and influence of men from our worship. How do you know? Here we go. The word worship in Scripture, the first time it's mentioned in Scripture, it's mentioned in Genesis chapter 22. Genesis chapter 22. I know I skipped a whole piece. But I skipped it because I'm trying to get done. It's in Genesis chapter 22, but I'll go back and give it to you, I promise. Genesis chapter 22. If you want to get an idea of what, because ultimately the question becomes, what is worship and what does it look like? If men are supposed to do it, how do we know when we're doing it? Here we go. Let me give you the answers up top. Let me tell you what worship is not, and then I'm going to tell you what worship is. Number one, worship is not a type of music. There's no such thing as praise music and worship music. And normally what we do is we'll say the slower songs are worship songs and the faster songs are praise songs. Not so. Not so. All songs are praise songs and all songs are worship songs. And so it's not a type of music, so don't say that. Number two, worship is not a service. Just because we gather here on a Sunday morning doesn't mean it's worship. Worship is not a service. We call it a worship service, but it can be and it cannot be. Sometimes it can be a bunch of other stuff. But worship is not a service. Worship is universal, which means everybody can do it. That's number three. Worship is universal. Everybody, matter of fact, not only does everybody can do it, everybody does do it. If you are an atheist, you worship. If you are a Christian, you worship. If you are a Buddhist, you worship. If you are a Muslim, you worship. If you are a Hindu, you worship. Everybody worships. The question is who? Or what? Here we go. Number four, worship is a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle. Trust me, if you haven't been living worship Monday through Saturday, you're going to do little worship on Sunday morning. Because worship is a lifestyle. Worship is not an event. It's a lifestyle. It's how we live. Moment by moment, day by day. The word worship in the Greek, the word worship is the word what is it? How do you call it? How do you say that? Pronuskio, I believe is the word. And it's where we get the word to prostate, or prostrate. Yeah. To prostrate. It's prostrate. It's the idea of the word worship. It means to bow down or to get low. It means to submit or to kiss, right? And so the idea behind worship, when it says worship, it means that there's a way in which, if we're not careful, we will self-worship. And what he says is, no, when you're worshiping, what you do is you take yourself and you put yourself low, right? In the Christian context, the idea is that God is up here and we're down here. And we live a lifestyle of bowing to God or getting low before him. It's not always praying, but it is a lifestyle of prayer. Are you with me? It is a lifestyle of submitting myself to God's wills, ideas, and wants. It is living a life where I place myself under him, where I get low when it comes to him. Are you with me? And so everybody worships. Here we go. The first time this word worship is mentioned is in Genesis 22. Now, I'm going to read you the story, and hopefully we'll be able to get through it. Probably not, but let's see. We'll cover as much as we can cover. Here we go. Genesis 22, verses 1 through 14. Now, this is the story of Abraham and Isaac. Watch this. After these things, God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham, here I am, he answered. Take your son, he said, your only son Isaac, whom you love. Go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains I will tell you about. Verse 3. So early in the morning, Abraham got up, saddled his donkey, and took with him 2 of his young men and his son Isaac. He split wood for a burnt offering and set out to go to the place God had told him about. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. Then Abraham said to his young men, stay here with the donkey. The boy and I will go over there to worship. There's our word. The boy and I will go over there to worship. Then we'll come back to you. Interesting. Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and laid it on his son Isaac. In his hand he took the fire and the sacrificial knife, and the 2 of them walked on together. Verse 7. Then Isaac spoke to his father Abraham and said, my father. And he said, here I am, my son. Isaac said, the fire and the wood are here, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? And after Abraham said, then Abraham answered, God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. Then the 2 of them walked on together. When they arrived at the place that God had told him about, Abraham built the altar there and arranged the wood. He bound his son Isaac, wonder how that took place, and placed him on the altar on top of the wood. Then Abraham reached out and took the knife to slaughter his son. But the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. He replied, here I am. Same response. Then he said, do not lay a hand on the boy or do anything to him, for now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your only son from me. Abraham looked up and saw a ram caught by its horns in the thicket. So Abraham went and took the ram and offered it as a burnt offering in place of his son. Then Abraham named that place, the Lord will provide. He named the place Jehovah Jireh. So today it is said, it will be provided on the Lord's mountain. Did you get that? Has everybody got that? Okay, here's the first thing I need you to see. Not on your handout, but I just need you to make a mental note of it. The first time you see the word worship in Scripture, the word is being used by a father going to worship with his son. The mama didn't take the boy down to worship. She didn't even go. The father took his son to worship. And I would submit to you that worship looks like what was about to happen on this mountain. How you get that, preacher? Here we go. What does worship look like? Number 1. I'm going to go through these kind of quick because I'm trying to get to the end. Here we go. What does worship look like? Number 1, I must obey God willingly. That's the first thing worship looks like. I must obey God willingly. God said in verse 1, he called to Abraham. Abraham said, here I am. He answered, take your son. He said, take your only son whom you love to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains I tell you about. Verse 3, so early in the morning, Abraham got up. No questions, no ifs, no whatabouts. God said it, Abraham did it. And so what does worship look like? Worship looks like obeying God willfully. It is when God says something, then I'm going to do what God says. Whether I like it, whether I don't like it, whether I agree, whether I disagree. If God said it, that's what I'm going to do. And I'll do it without complaint. Okay, y'all don't like that one. Here we go. Worship is not about obeying for results. I'll do this if you. No. Abraham did what God said without a clue of how God was going to get him out of it. One of the things that you have to be careful of is worshiping for results. Trying something once, and if it don't work, well, I ain't doing that. No. You don't do what your parents say so your parents can bless you. You do what your parents say because your parents told you to do it. And they might bless you if you do what they tell you to do. But them blessing you is not the contingency upon obedience. Are you? Y'all don't like that one either. Okay. All right, let me get to something y'all like. Okay, here we go. I must trust God. Number 2, I must trust God seriously. What does worship look like? It looks like obeying God willingly, because remember, worship is a lifestyle. Worship looks like obeying God willingly. And number 2, it looks like trusting God seriously. Trusting God seriously. Look at verse 5. Look at verse 5. Brothers, when Abraham said this to his young men, stay here with the donkey. The boy and I will go over there and worship, and we'll come back to you. Huh? Wait. Hey, didn't God tell you to go and take your son and kill him? In verse 1? Well, yeah. If God told you to take the boy and go burn him on an altar and kill him and sacrifice him, how are you going to tell your guys? We'll go over and worship and we'll be right back. How are you going to say that if you do what God tells you to do? Because I trust him. And I trust him in such a way that if he tells me to do something that I disagree with, he's going to get me out of it. And I don't need to know the details in order to do what he said to do, because I trust him completely. Ooh, here we go. Oh, here we go. I will know how much let me ask this question. How many of you say you trust God? Trust him. Okay, hands down. Here's the test. Right? I know how much I trust when I have, listen to this, a problem I cannot fix. God gave Abraham a problem he couldn't fix. Now the question is, either you're going to fix it or you're going to let me fix it. Either you're going to go back and slang more dope or you're going to let me provide for you. Either you're going to smoke yourself into joy, or you're going to put your mind on the Lord and allow the perfect peace of God to cover you with no weed, no coke, no crack, no. Y'all don't like that one either, okay? You don't know how much you trust until God gives you a problem you can't fix. And when God gives you a problem you can't fix, and there's no way out of it, and you're not cute enough, you ain't smart enough, you don't have enough money, you don't know enough people, your network is not big enough, and only God can do it. Will you still try to do what only God can do, or will you sit back and wait and worship him anyway until he does what he can do? I know how much I trust when I got a problem I can't fix, a frustration that won't go away, and I have every reason to quit. You really don't know how much you trust until you're in one of those three scenarios. Because the question is, will you still worship him even though life doesn't resemble the blessings that you've always had? Here we go. Whew. Man, I got to hurry up. Okay. Man, I wish I could just take my time. Okay. Here we go. Number 3, I must surrender to God wholeheartedly. I must surrender to God wholeheartedly. Now, I'm going to skip some stuff and get to the end so y'all not left hanging. Here we go. I must surrender to God wholeheartedly. Here we go. Now, here's what I need you to see. Abraham takes his son to the mountain to worship. His son says, Daddy, we got the wood. We got the fire. We got the knife. There's going to be an altar. But Daddy, you said we were coming to worship.
The truth is, I almost gave up, but a power that I can't explain. That Holy Ghost power, y'all, fell from heaven like a shower down. Now I know we've been hurt, y'all, but still, I smile. Come on. Even though I hurt, see, I smile. And y'all feel that? I know God is working, so I smile. Even though I've been it for a while.
And again, I don't know how this worked, and I wish I had time to build this up. But he somehow tackled his son, bound that boy up, put him on the altar, took the knife and raised it. Watch it now. And the angel said from heaven, don't touch him. Look over there. There's a ram caught in a bush. Take the boy off the altar, go get the ram, put the ram on the altar, sacrifice the ram. Now watch. What I need for you to see, this was not a miraculous ram. The Bible does not say that God said, let there be ram, and there was ram. It wasn't a miraculous ram, but it was a providential ram. Abraham, with his son, was taking his son up the mountain to worship. And when he got to the place to worship, knowing something's got to die, God said, look over there, there's a ram. Go get that ram. Now, this is not a miraculous ram, but it is a providential ram. And this a particular ram